8 out of 10 is not bad. All right, so yesterday we took a look at prologue. Remember, prologue, main thing we were looking at is Tim getting his power with all his light bulbs that he has around him, and then kind of getting into context of Battle Royale, where, hey, he's willing to kind of sacrifice that dignity, safety, morals, all those things in order for him to get that scholarship and be able to go off to school. So when Chapter 2 shows up, well, now you kind of get to see some stuff within the school. So what we're hoping to do today would be school, True Blood, / like Golden Day. And then I know folks wanted to talk about the Barbie speech, the sermon, and then hopefully we can fit in a little bit of stuff within New York City as he gets there. If you ever want a moment of awkward silence, you just ask a class, hey, what do you think about Doom True Blood?
Awkward silence?
Yeah, that's pretty much Knowing that Ellison does puns, and he likes messing around with names, why is True Blood a good name? Rebecca wasn't here. Okay, so you have true / pure. Pretend that says pure blood. I'd say that's option number 1. I don't think we mentioned option number 2 yesterday. What would be it says pure. What would be a second thing with it? Still going with the same words, true and blood, maybe. Matt, it's been working all day. Actually, it hasn't. It's been like doing this all day long. Why would true blood work for not what he does, but for what he doesn't do? And I'm talking after the fact. Because, and by no means I'm trying to make it sound as if he's really a good person. You should view him differently. But if you had a person in that situation, I don't think it would surprise too many people if that person just got up and got out, as quickly as he can. What does he actually do? We're still with that True Blood play. He's still staying with the family. And then it goes into the question, was he taking care of his children or his grandchildren? And then, we try not to think about that anymore. That's why. But yeah, in a way, he is certainly still, as opposed to pure blood, he is staying true or staying faithful, where he is going to stick by to his blood, to his family. It might not be in a normal way, but he is still supporting them. I mean, when he tells the story, and the part that really I think kind of freaks out a lot of folks while you're reading it, it's not just the content of what he's talking about, it's the ease with which he says it. Oh, you want to know? Well, here's what happened. There was this dream I had, and then I woke up and my wife got mad and she hit me, but yeah, we're here. Everything's okay. Still bleeding a little bit, but I'll be all right. Why is he so smooth with giving the story? So calm with giving the story? I think he certainly regrets some things with it that have happened.
But he's not because I think it's a sin.
And that's kind of like the escape, clause that he kind of works. It's still, I think if you go, Jim, should this have happened? No, I don't think it should have. But if he's been telling this story over and over and over again, it's going to get a little bit smoother and easier with the delivery. He's telling the story to Norton with such ease because he's probably told it over and over and over again. Why? And he keeps getting. I mean, what's the benefit by him telling the story to Norton? Norton gives him $100. Is the action, worth $100? No. Does that make what he did okay? No. But it certainly makes it profitable to a certain way. And depending on the reading check quiz, the quote quiz that some of you had a bunch of different True Blood quotes. One of them is pretty much, paraphrasing, things are pretty much better than they've ever been before because he has money that is coming in for him. Why would Norton give him the money? Why give, for doing a horrible deed, you plagiarized your essay, here's $25. You failed your test, here's a quarter. What do you think? To help for the children? Okay, so it's still kind of helping out with the family. And basically, you're going to try to help someone that you feel, like what emotions would you feel for him if you're going to financially support him? It could be something like sympathy. Any other emotions? Pity. Hopefully not empathy.
The vibe that I was getting from it was that they were kind of supporting him because they were showing that he is inferior to them because a white man.
And there was a term that not talking about that specific deed, but go back to your favorite time of the year, Heart of Darkness. Oh. And it's certainly a misguided idea, but Megan would be right. It's meant to kind of help and lift up, quote unquote, the inferior, races, civilizations, things like that. So Norton does it partially out of sympathy, partially out of pity. I think a term that you could use for white man's burden is he feels that it is an obligation that he has to help True Blood. You take Tim's standpoint on it, though. Tim is not feeling sympathy. Tim is not feeling pity. Tim is not feeling obligation. Tim's feeling disgust, embarrassed, ashamed, all of those things. So there's this barbaric stereotype that True Blood does epitomize for Norton, and there's this stereotype that Tim and everyone else are trying to disassociate themselves from. And True Blood telling the story, as freely as he does in collecting money, it certainly doesn't look good on Tim or anybody else. Especially if Norton, by the end of the week, not if he's going to get $100 every single time. If he's making $150, I'm not making anything. When I'm going to school, there's certainly going to be some resentment that's going to take place too. Imagine what happens when the baby's born. Then what's going to happen? Not only hear the story, let's go see, and then be like, that's a baby, and probably more stuff is going to kind of come in for him. So there's certainly, absolutely going to be some resentment between Tim, the black community, and True Blood and what he's doing. But really, why does True Blood do it? And one of the characters in the Golden Day that kind of becomes a big influence, and True Blood would certainly be someone. Oh, we got to do this again. What character gets introduced to us with Golden Day? Oh, maybe we're back. We got Vet Doctor. What do you make of the Vet Doctor? Well, he is in the insane asylum. Someone else said weird earlier. It's like, well, what do you mean by weird? I don't know. It was weird.
Weird. At first I was like, oh, he's so nice. He's helping out, and he started
For weird, same question I asked the other person earlier. Weird still within Golden Day or weird on the bus? Like when they're going up north? Still on the Golden Day? Same answer the other person gave.
It's like he doesn't recognize his place. He's too old.
Okay. And that was Annie. Nice was not that you do dislike him. Nice was the way he kind of started off for you.
Yeah, he was helping out. And
Okay.
He was like, I'm not like that, and then he started
Someone said calm too, kind of, and then becoming more assertive. We'll put weird. Matt, you said not knowing his place. anyone remember any quotes from the vet doctor that may have been on your quiz?
He said, "Behold the zombie."
That's one. Did you get that one right? Behold, walking zombie. That might not have been on yours.
No, that was. I think I got that one right.
There we go. And who's he referred to as a walking zombie? Not Norton, but yeah, Tim. There's another term that he also uses to describe Tim, and it's more of an archaic term that we don't use anymore. It begins with an A. Auto. Someone's going to say mobile, and then we go no. Automaton. What's an automaton? It'll show up eventually. It's, yeah, a robotic. Mechanical man, robotic man, something along those ideas. Slowly we're going to get there. There we are. There was another quote, if you didn't have the zombie one, I think it was on the other quiz, where it was the whole idea you don't have to believe in it, but you have to play the game. Look, you said that one with confidence.
I know I wrong.
Well, you know it now. The vet. Bledsoe did not say it. I would say Bledsoe does this, and we'll talk about what it means. Bledsoe, I love my invisible ink. I think you could say, who else plays the game?
Is Bledsoe just the past tense of Bledsoe?
Bledsoe. Follow that up with a true blood. And I think there's another person who you could say also plays the game. And what we mean by play the game, you play the part, you play your role, but you still use it to your, yeah, the guy who got beat up, but you still use it to your advantage. Oh, we're not there yet, though. When does Tim play the game? Not the guy who gets kicked out of school, not the guy who gets punched and beat up, but the guy who has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, has his light bulbs, is stealing his power, gets in a confrontation, beats someone up. He's invisible. He's able to kind of disappear and go back into his little hole and disappear again. So to play the game is to kind of play your part. He has one of the things that he mentions his grandfather tells him is that his grandfather's been a trader his whole life, and so we need to like kind of do something different. We need to actually kind of be a little bit more assertive, and that's where the vet doctor comes in. It's absolutely true that he becomes very assertive towards Norton. He becomes very assertive towards Tim when you have the conversation. And the whole reasoning, as to why he ends up going up north absolutely would be because he is out of his place. Keep in mind what the vet doctor is. In his previous life, so to speak, he was a physician. He was, World War I. He was in France. And the big thing, not an occupation, but the way he was viewed with an R, he was respected. I think another term that you could certainly use to describe the vet doctor would be if he's a physician, if he was well known, if he was able to successfully do brain surgeries, he was also therefore probably very intelligent, well educated. And where does he end up? In the insane asylum. Who's at the school? Who's at the insane asylum? Is where, we said, at the insane asylum. Who's at the school? Those who we can lower the veil, kind of like maybe not even trust, but train to look at things in a certain kind of way. And that's where Bledsoe is certainly someone who also is in a lot of power because he wants people that he can control. The Golden Day, hey, let's go to the Golden Day. You've never heard of it before. What kind of restaurant besides Golden Corral would you kind of expect it to be? Ooh, it's got a name called the Golden Day.
Texas Roadhouse.
Very nice. Happy. Free peanuts for everyone.
Yeah.
Don't go with your food allergy. It seems like it would be an okay place.
Sounds like a Texas Roadhouse.
What you end up having at this Golden Day, certainly bar, brothel, and all that kind of stuff, but it's a place where you should be able to, if we're going to take a term that gets used with Invisible Man, shh, pay attention. Golden Day, it would be a place, there's light, you're actually going to be able to kind of see things a little bit that would be happening. But at the Golden Day, and it really is kind of meant to be, I'd say, a humorous scene. It breaks up the seriousness of what's going on with the boxing match, with what you're going to be getting later on with Bledsoe, what you just had with Jim Trueblood. Really, all kind of chaos just kind of breaks loose, and there's certainly some dark elements of humor to it. And you have Megan's favorite character getting, beaten up and kicked and all that kind of stuff. Seems to like the name of it at least a little bit. With Supercargo, just assertive was the name term used with the vet doctor, right? When describing him, I'll say you said assertive. It'll make it sound good. Supercargo. Get a lot of questions. People going, "Why in the world would you name a character Supercargo?" It is cool. It's up there with Beowulf. Still like that name. Just like when you need it to show up. Eventually it'll appear there. Anyone know what the super ego is? Nope. I go my head. When we were talking about Siddhartha, we were mentioning the whole idea about the conscious, the subconscious, the collective subconscious, and all those kinds of things. Still not showing up yet. Freud, psychologist, early 20th century, he comes up with the mind is kind of broken up into three categories. He has the id, the ego, and the superego. The ego is, again, kind of those unconscious things. The id is your assertiveness. It's the part that makes you actually do stuff. The superego is the oppression. So what you kind of have going on within the Golden Day, you have this aggressiveness that's kind of taking place where you're overcoming this superego or this oppression that you need to kind of have a rise up. The problem becomes if you do become too assertive, hey, there you are. If you do become too assertive, the punishment could be, at least within this area, that Bledsoe is going to kick you out. But I would say it kind of has more of that psychological aspect where in order for you to play the game, in order for you not to be kind of recognized as a walking zombie, it's important that you become assertive and overthrow that part that is oppressive, and the superego is meant to be the oppressive part of your mind. So supercargo, superego, Allison's doing a little bit of wordplay again. Essentially, supercargo is meant to be that oppressive part that he's going to stand up to with it. The vision thing certainly kind of keeps on going all throughout the whole entire school, and I know Chapter 5 with the sermon was a concern for a lot of people. What's Barbie's first name? No.
Oh,
That is.
I know it. Homer.
Matt almost threw his pencil at you.
Was that right?
Yeah. No friction there whatsoever. Besides Homer Simpson, you know any Homers? No. Not a philosopher. He Greek poet. who's known for his stories. The most famous of them would be the Odyssey, the Iliad. So when you're dealing with Achilles and all those kinds of things. Barbie gives a sermon. His sermon is certainly a praising speech about whom? He's praising the founder, okay? He also, and he basically refers to the founder as being like a savior, makes a comparison to Moses. Not only does he then praise the founder, but he also is going to praise the guy who is going to be carrying on the founder's legacy, and that's, of course, going to be Dr. Bledsoe. He gives this beautiful speech, wonderful oration, and then he takes off his glasses, and then what does Tim realize about him? He is blind, just like I am right now. Homer, the Greek poet, is renowned for also being blind, where he would orate his poems. It wouldn't be something that he'd be able to write down, but he would keep them all in his memory. What would be the significance about Barbie doing all this praising of the founder and Bledsoe, and then in reality recognizing that he is blind? He would be blind to the truth. Just in case there was any doubt about it, Ellison puts in one more little detail with it. When he's done with the speech, he starts hearing birds outside as he's walking out of the chapel. They're not blackbirds, not bluebirds, not crows, not doves. Think Harper Lee. So you have this mocking element of the speech. Bledsoe gets praised. Bledsoe is renowned. Chapter 5, chapter 6 then is when Tim has to have his meeting with Bledsoe, and that's when the real Bledsoe starts to come out. Anyone pick up, and this would be a good symbol for your motif sheet for chapter 6, what Bledsoe has on his desk? There's a, what did you say? It's got a shackle. It's got a leg shackle. And it's kind of been like, it's an old one, but it's kind of been polished to make it look a little bit nicer. And he mentions that it is a shackle that is a sign of our progress. So Bledsoe, when you get to the real truth about him, he has this shackle. On page 142, he goes off when he talks about the type of power that he has, and he will maintain that power to any end. Mentions I'll have boys, hanging from tree limbs all throughout here as long as it maintains me keeping my power. I'll say yes, sir, to any white man, but I'll still have real, honest to goodness power. He is playing the game. So if a person is going to get in his way, and he also uses a lot of boxing metaphors from Tim. You jab, but you can't really throw them all that well. And of course, Tim had to go through the whole boxing match just to get here. But Bledsoe is worried only about keeping his power in line. The school itself, when you go back to the insane asylum, those who are educated are in the insane asylum. Those who Bledsoe can train and those who he can control are the ones who make the best students for him. Chapter 2, Tim gives some description about the school itself. Beautiful campus, really sets itself apart from everything else that would be in town. And he goes in description of the buildings. And there's a type of paint that's been used on all the buildings. They're brick buildings, but they've all been not just washed, but whitewashed. If you whitewash something, you take white paint, you mix it in with water, and it gives it kind of like a little glaze effect. Why are whitewashed buildings appropriate for the school? White trustees, white money, Bledsoe keeping people happy with the white. Booker T. Washington, half white, half black. Booker T. Washington's statue of the founder has the streaks of whiteness on it because of all the bird poop that's coming down on it, which Tim makes a lot of references to with the description of it. So you kind of have this whitewashed or this white training that is taking place within the school. True Blood, no, not part of this, separate. Vet Doctor, he is getting aggressive and assertive and weird and doesn't know his place. We got to get him out. Tim, he's not going to be willing to lie to a white man. He's not being trained properly. We're going to get him out. Here, we keep people trained and control under our control. Those are the folks that we want. If you're dangerous or there's a chance of you being educated or going outside of those boundaries, and when Tim's driving the car, he makes special note on the road, I gotta follow the white line. I can't cross over that white line. There's certain limits to what he has to do, and if there's any risk, we're gonna kick him out and send him someplace else. So after 3 years, he doesn't fit the mold that Bledsoe wants, he's gone. Eleanor made reference about is that past tense of blood, so, with bled, so. True Blood, Bledsoe. True Blood, Bledsoe.
He like suffered, so now it's his turn to be on top.
What do you mean?
Blood in the past tense, like he used to bleed.
Okay, gotcha. So he has already bled, and now he's going to be coming to power.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
now I want to.
And with the, and I gotta switch him, I guess, to the other way. And with the whitewashed buildings, there's one building that is not whitewashed. There is a black powerhouse that is in the middle of the campus, except there's one part, the windows have what kind of tint to it? Red windows from all the furnace, you know, the power, the boilers and all that kind of stuff with it, but he's kind of meant to be the black powerhouse. You could say he's kind of paid his dues, and so now it's his time to kind of be on power. If you view him as being, you know, more of kind of like a villain, and certainly he's kind of the antagonist, True Blood, as uncomfortable it is to say, what did he do? He raped. And he got rewarded for it in a way with money. Not the literal action with Bledsoe, but if he's willing to sacrifice, if he's willing to exploit and then discard and basically leave people for dead afterward, what is he doing to his race, to his community? He's raping them in a more figurative way than what True Blood has done. So I think with that blood line, you have someone who is at least true to his blood, true to his family, and you have a person who kind of is the opposite of that. I'm going to use you just for my own personal gain. And then I'm going to ship you off to New York City with letters that aren't going to do anything for you. And I know we're starting to get here to the end of the period. Tim's going to be in New York, you know, pretty much throughout pretty much the rest of the book. One thing that, of course, he struggles with is absolutely going to be his identity. A character that folks have a rough time with figuring out what in the world's going on would be in chapter 9. He comes across a guy by the name of Peter Wheatstraw. Anyone remember what Petey has with him? He's got a shopping cart. And he's got something in his shopping cart. Blueprints. And he's singing the blues with his blueprints. Wheatstraw is a real person. The name Peter Wheatstraw is a real person. Allison would be familiar with him because he's an early 20th century blues singer who is from the South. He kind of has a southern quality about him that is making Tim uncomfortable. Tim is trying to become someone new. What really works with Wheatstraw is to kind of see the scene that happens right after he runs into Peter Wheatstraw. He ends up going to order breakfast, and he walks up to the counter, and the guy there goes, "Ooh, I know what you want for breakfast. You want..."
Grits.
Grits was one part.
Biscuits.
Not biscuits. Well, no, they did mention biscuits, but there was also then meat item with it. Pork chops and grits. You look like a pork chop and grits kind of guy. And Tim goes, wait a minute, I don't want anything to do with the pork chop and grits. That's a southern breakfast. I want something that's going to be more of who I am now. And so he decides to go with the OJ and toast. Because he is being, with the pork chop and grits, he's being viewed as he's southern, and he's being perceived in a way that he wants to kind of leave behind. Where I'm in the city, I want basically what he kind of refers to as the businessman's breakfast. It's not necessarily like an insult that you're too low class, that we don't think you're going to go anywhere, therefore you're pork chops and grits, but he's being perceived in a certain way, and he wants to kind of break free of that. Now, he doesn't realize that he's the invisible man, yet at this point, but it's part of that, he's trying to change who he is. Why? Because he wants to fit a certain role, a certain perception of where he is. So it's still an identity crisis where he's kind of leaving part of himself behind. You look like a North Hills kind of person. You're embracing your North Hills-ness about you, as opposed to picking, some other kind of thing or whatnot. So that identity crisis, something that we'll certainly still kind of keep taking a look at. Remember where you're going for next Friday through chapter 15, page 332. Please do your quiz over the weekend. By Monday night, Your poetry quiz. Yep. Yeah, I'll be over.